First, let me introduce the speaker sponsor, St. Alphonsus, and representing St. Al's, Phil Harrop. Thank you, Phil. I probably pronounced your name wrong all year, didn't I? And you were so kind. You never said a word. Phil is the Executive Director of Operations at St. Al's. He's also on our board. He's just won the Dessert Award. Man, you're an awesome guy.
Thanks,
you got it all together.
Thanks.
Thanks, pal.
I'm not so sure about that. My wife is here, and she might describe me a little bit differently. Before I introduce our speaker, though, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your support of the Chamber. My wife and I moved here 3 years ago from Ohio. This is a great place to live and to work, to raise a family. And we love being here. So thanks for what you all do to make this such a great place to not only do business, but to work, to live, to go to school, and to raise kids. And I think Dan might agree, Nampa's a pretty good place to grow up. So with that, Dan Price founded Gravity Payments from his dorm room after witnessing thousands of hardworking small business owners being overcharged and underserved by their credit card processors. Dan built his company on values of honesty and transparency instilled upon him while growing up in rural Nampa. He didn't want to confuse business owners with industry jargon or hide fees in the fine print. Instead, Gravity employs honesty, transparency, and doing business with integrity. These simple values have set Dan and his company apart from many other processors, making Gravity the most trusted name in the payments industry. Today, over 12,000 independent businesses across all 50 states trust Gravity to save them millions in fees and hours in frustration by making it easy and simple for them to accept payments. Dan's recent decision to raise his company's minimum salary to $70,000 has captured headlines around the world. Incidentally, it was a month ago tonight that I saw that story on Fox News. It's pretty late in the evening, and that was remarkable to see all the attention after that. His leadership and entrepreneurship have earned him many awards, notably Entrepreneur Magazine's Entrepreneur of 2014, the 2014 Seattle Business Executive Excellence Award, the 2013 GeekWire's Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award, and the 2010 SBA National Young Entrepreneur of the Year awarded to him by President Obama. With that, we welcome and are pleased to have Dan Price.
Am I good? Everyone can hear me? Cool. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I actually grew up a little bit south of Nampa. We are addressed to Nampa, and we were very involved in the Nampa community. I went to Nampa Christian High School. So I thought I'd just maybe share a little bit about my story with everybody. Again, I feel really privileged to be here. This is a great event. And then from there, I was hoping we could do a little bit of Q&A. That's my favorite part of all this stuff all the time, so I'm hoping to get to your guys' questions and we can create a little bit more of a dialogue. So I was actually born in Michigan, and my dad and mom are here in the audience. I really appreciate you guys and love you guys. I was the fourth of 6 kids, and I have 3 older brothers. And I was actually born just off the campus of Michigan State University in the same hospital as my dad and my grandfather. And my older brothers were pretty nice to me most of the time, but sometimes they weren't so nice to me. So I decided, as a kid in Michigan, that we were right on Michigan State Spartan campus, right? And I decided I was going to be a Michigan Wolverines fan. So I've always had a little bit of an independent streak, and always kind of wanted to do that. So when I was 5 years old, we actually moved here, and my dad got a job working for AIM. And it was exciting times. We got to go out and have all this, great open Idaho kind of experience. We were out in the country. And I remember I used to go on walks out in the country. And one time, after like a 6 or 7 hour walk, I got home and I was in trouble because my parents couldn't find me. My family couldn't find me. They thought I was lost. They thought I was in trouble. But what they didn't realize was I actually had done that like probably about 100 times. It was just the first time that I got caught. And so growing up in Idaho, it's such a privilege to grow up here. And it's such a great place. And after that, my mom homeschooled me. And, my dad... my parents, they have 6 kids, right? And it's pretty hard to raise 6 kids. There's a lot of work involved. And my dad was working so hard. He was such a great example for me. And my mom, she works so hard all the time to educate us. And my mom is so passionate about education. She's so passionate about independent thinking. So she decided she wanted to homeschool us, at least until junior high, and give us some of that same independent streak. And it was just like, it was such a privilege being out there. And it was so fun. And so finally, actually, when I was in 7th grade, I convinced my mom and my dad to let me go to school. And I started at Nampa Christian High School. And it was pretty funny because being homeschooled, I was actually always the coolest kid in my class. And my mom told me that, so I was like... So I thought I'd go to class, and at Nampa Christian, I thought I'd be, really popular and have all these social skills. It was actually really difficult to adjust. How many people here maybe have friends or family or relatives that are homeschoolers? And how many people know the stereotype of homeschoolers? So it's a little bit of an adjustment. There were a few kids that actually asked me if there was something wrong with me, if I might have some disability or something. And that 7th grade year, I met 2 guys, Sean O'Connell and Nate Hampson, who currently play in a local band called Aaron Mark Brown. But I met these 2 guys, and we started playing music together in Sean's garage. We were so passionate. We played together, and we just loved it. We 4 or 5 hours a day sometimes. We'd play all night. We'd write songs. And we had such a great community around us, Nampa Christian, here in Nampa. And Stu Sells, who has a local business here called Register Graphics, they do printing. He actually printed us up 500 stickers. And we went around school selling these stickers for $1 a piece. And we were able to make $500 and save up to actually have a demo CD. And we played a show for Stu's son Kyle, who was in our class, for his birthday. And we played a second show for our friend Travis's birthday. And then our 3rd show ever was a fundraiser for Nampa Christian 8th grade memory night, which you start fundraising for in 7th grade. And so we played a show, and our whole school rallied around us, and there were 300 people at our first actual show raising money for 8th grade memory night. And 5 of the people that came were the members of our favorite local rock band at the time called F4X, also from Nampa. And they were like our heroes, right? These guys were like the best band ever. And they approached us afterwards and said, can you guys go on tour with us? Can you guys start playing with us? So we actually did small tours. We did our first small tour like to Twin Falls and like other places like that. Just a mecca of music, right? Actually, funny thing about Twin Falls, at the time, all the people that listened to music in Twin Falls, they all wore all black and they had really pale skin. It was kind of like a gothic thing. And I didn't normally dress like this, but I decided to go to Abercrombie and get some like yellow shirts and stuff to go to Twin Falls. And it was really fun. Like everyone was wearing black, and the members of my band are like, Dan, we're going to get beat up. What are you doing? Anyway, the band kept growing, and it was so fun here. Actually, our best show ever, we played for 5,000 people at the Idaho Fairgrounds for a show called Light in the Night, which was on Halloween night. And it was one of the best nights of my life. We had been on tour for like a month. We came back, and I hadn't seen any of my friends, and all of a sudden, all my friends are out there in the audience. There's 5,000 people, and there's almost 1,000 people right up in front. And our CD had been out at that point, but we hadn't been home since it had been out. And I see 1,000 people singing a song back to me that I wrote. And that was actually one of the best moments of my life. It was so fun. And so, this is kind of, Idaho's a big part of me, right? And from a business standpoint, in Idaho, we don't have things like they have in Seattle and San Francisco and New York. How many venture capitalists do we have in Seattle? I've never heard, in Nampa. I've never heard of too many. And even words like entrepreneur and all this kind of stuff, we kind of have this ethos of small business owner in Idaho that's really exciting. And so I grew up with that. And to me, the idea of business at the time was what I saw with my dad, what I saw with my family, and what I saw with the community here, which was basically business is about service. It's not about taking for yourself, it's about giving to others. And you want to give the absolute most value that you can to your clients, to your community, and you want to charge a fair amount, maybe even less than a fair amount, because you want to give back. So this was kind of the way I learned to do business here in Idaho. And when I went to Seattle and started my business, I didn't know any better. So even though there, they'd probably say that's the stupidest business model in the world, to me it made sense. I want to give back. And so through my band, I actually met a bunch of small business owners. And my dad at the time was getting into consulting, but he actually had a short stint in the credit card processing industry. And I was able to look over his shoulder and kind of see what he was doing and try to figure out a way that I could apply some of those same business lessons. And there were these great independent business owners. Here in Nampa, and at the time in Boise, we had Flying M, which is such a great business, right? A big part of our community is centered around this business. And they add so much. And the owner, Kevin, he's so passionate. He adds so much to our community. But if you look at how much he adds to the community and what he actually gets for it, you know, he's kind of undercompensated for the amount of value that he provides for all of us. And so it was really exciting to see that for me and be passionate about, I have an opportunity to serve somebody that's actually serving the entire community. And that's what was so inspiring for me. So I went to Seattle, initially to go to Seattle Pacific University. I was able to get a small music scholarship there, which was really fun and exciting. Started singing and started working on my business. And again, it was kind of like this dumb, in New York terms, business model, because you just do the best you can. And it was kind of funny the way it grew. We'd get to about $3,000 in profit, and then we'd hire someone, we'd go back to break even. We'd get to $3,000 in profit, and we'd hire somebody to go back to break even. I didn't know how to raise money. I didn't know how to like make some super fancy, New York business model or anything like that. And so I was just growing it the way I knew how. And that was really fun and exciting until about 2008. And at the time, I think we had about 40 people total at Gravity. And we were just barely squeaking by, but we were making a little profit. And in about 2 weeks, we lost 20% of our revenue. So basically overnight. And I went from having a business that was squeaking by, and I was really happy because I was making $30,000 a year and so happy, to we have 5 months before we completely go under and like all this goes away. So I rallied everyone together and I said, hey guys, if we all work together, we can actually get through this. And in about 3, 4, 5 months, which is just before we're going to run out of money, we can actually get our revenue up if we hold our expenses where they're at and get to break even and then accelerate out of that. And so that's what we did. We all worked together. I went back to working 18-hour days like I did when we were starting. And after work every day, I'd go out and talk to restaurant owners and other business owners and help them with their processing, help us grow our company. And we just barely got out of it. And then, just when we squeaked by, our largest vendor went bankrupt. And I remember getting a call at one point, and I basically found out that we were going to lose $1.5 million in the bankruptcy, which was going to completely wipe out the company. So then I took on a second job, and I became bankruptcy attorney. So I actually got appointed by the court to represent a certain class of unsecured creditors in the bankruptcy. And fortunately, I could do everything over the phone, so no one knew how old I was. And I actually had a several $100,000 legal budget that I controlled in this bankruptcy. And the creditors that were situated like us, just to give you a sense of the numbers, there was about $300 million of debt. And there was about $100 million of assets. And there was the first $100 million need to be paid to the senior secured creditors. Then the junior secured creditors need to be paid $100 million. And we didn't get anything until both of those were paid. But I actually got the senior secured creditors and the buyer of the business to say, Gravity Payments is so important to our business that we're not going to buy this business, we're not going to pay the $100 million unless we make sure they survive. And so we got through that. And then when I thought, sky's clear, we're good, one of our largest customers went bankrupt. And I walked in one day, and, it was 2008, 2009, it was so tough. I walked in one day, there was a letter on my desk that basically said, Dan, we need to talk. And it was a letter from our client, which was a furniture store, to its customers. We're sorry that your furniture's been on back order. Don't worry, though, you can just charge back your credit card. You'll get a full refund. And I know that this is going to come 100% out of my pocket, out of our company's pocket. So we just barely got through that. We did our best to survive there. And finally, by 2010, I was feeling confident and stable again. So I always enjoyed volunteering and working with nonprofits. And I went on a nonprofit trip, and I was in China. And I got a letter that was weird. It was via email, and it said, Dan, can you look at this press release before it goes out just to make sure it's okay? It's weird. What kind of press release does someone want me to look at? And I opened up the letter, and it was a press release from the Small Business Administration saying that President Obama was going to name me the Entrepreneur of the Year for 2010, and I needed to be in Washington, D.C. to be recognized in 2 days. I was like, is this a joke? And they're like, what? We sent you a letter. And I'd been on the road, for work and everything. I'm like, you mean like snail mail? You guys still do that? So I took a 30-hour trip. It was actually the very last plane that I was able to get on and still get there in time. And I was supposed to continue my nonprofit trip up to Shanghai at that point. But I diverted and I went to Washington, D.C., and I go, and as soon as I get there, they say, well, Hillary Clinton would like you to come to the Benjamin Franklin room of the State Department. She'd like to thank you for your service. So I go to the Benjamin Franklin room of the State Department. And they say, well, Secretary Clinton's not actually here right now, but she wants to Skype in to say hi and congratulate all the winners. Okay, no problem. So they put her on Skype. Hi, from Shanghai, China. And then the next morning, I went to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. They have all these crazy concrete barricades that go into the ground. You go through this. And then I waited in the East Garden for a little bit, and then I waited in another room for a little bit, and maybe 2 hours later, I'm in the Rose Garden, and actually spent about 45 minutes in a small group with the president, and then just a couple minutes one-on-one, which was really fun. And it was a very surreal experience. Part of it was that I was getting this award that I didn't understand. Part of it was that it was the President of the United States, so I see on TV and all this kind of stuff. And the other part was that I'd just done a 30-hour flight from China. So I was kind of in a weird place, and it was really fun, and I felt really privileged. And I realized that going through that adversity was a big part of kind of what led to what happened in 2010. So then, the business continued, but there was always a little bit of something like, I want to do more. I want to do better. And for me, the outlet for that was always, we got to do better for our clients. And we need to lower our prices for our clients. We need to have better service. We need to have more transparency. We need to make things more simple, reduce headaches. And so we're constantly pushing the boundaries for these independent business owners like Kevin from Flying M. One thing, though, that I realized in that was the team that was doing this, they were becoming superstars. Our culture and the type of people we were attracting, they did such a phenomenal job. And I started to see them exceed me in a lot of ways. And we were setting our compensation largely based on market pay rates, right? And so we have technical call center position, financial customer service call center position, me as the CEO. And when I looked at those market rates, and we paid those, and when I looked at the value that these people were actually adding, myself included, there was just something that didn't jive. And I thought about it for a long time, and the company started to improve and perform, and I thought, what am I going to do about this? And I went on a hike one day. I was with a friend, and she was mentioning how her rent was going up by a couple $100s. This is an individual who served in the military for 11 years, did 3 tours in the Middle East, and served her country with honor, and then came back incredibly smart, working hard, working lots of hours, and had a couple years to get readjusted into the workforce, and that small rent increase just completely threw her out. For me, there was something wrong with that, and it finally hit me like, I can't change the world all by myself, but I'm a leader here. I'm responsible for these people, and I'm responsible, frankly, to my own conscience to do what I think is right. So I decided that day, it was a Sunday, and I was hiking, and I decided that day that I was going to institute a $70,000 minimum wage for everyone at Gravity. And the reason why I decided to do that was I felt that at $70,000, people could live a normal life, a normal healthy life, have a little bit of margin of safety for emergencies, a little bit of savings. And there was also a study done in 2010 by Princeton that showed that dollars over about $75,000 don't actually help you out at all. I mean, you'll be happy when you get a raise, but then you'll get used to it and won't really matter. But dollars under $75,000, if you make less than $75,000, every dollar that you're making is causing you emotional stress. And the thing I realized is all of us only get to live once, right? And so we might as well have fun and live like the fullest life we possibly can. So I decided on a Sunday I was going to do this. Sunday night, can't sleep, night terrors. Tuesday night, can't sleep, night terrors. For 2 weeks, I was like, Dan, you got to forget this idea. This is not a good idea. I was going to take the profit of my company that I had built up with blood, sweat, and tears for 12 years from $2.2 million to just barely scraping by in 1 second. I actually looked at my pay and I said, well, for the safety of the company, I'm going to cut my pay as well to $70,000 so that we can get by until our profit goes back up and until we can make enough where my pay can go back up to where it needs to be, where I could be replaced if something happened to me and the company could continue. So it was a big decision. I was so sick of the night terrors that when I finally announced it, I saw a video of me announcing it later. And I'm looking at my face and I'm like, wow, that's like the happiest guy on the planet. And what I didn't expect was there had been a whole conversation brewing about pay, about lifestyle, about how we all relate to each other, and about this growing gap about how some people are getting left behind. And my most conservative Republican friends thought it was a huge problem, and my most liberal Democrat friends thought it was a huge problem. But it wasn't a problem that we were really talking about. You know, money, we're always taught it's not polite, it's rude, like, let's not talk about that. And so what happened was apparently there was this big conversation, and the analogy I would use, there was a big parade going on all throughout the streets of the United States. And I ran out in the middle of it and had a flag all of a sudden, and everyone decided, oh, look, Dan started this big parade. I'm not so sure that's true, but a couple things happened. The New York Times got wind of it, and they actually wrote a story about it, and it became a viral sensation. It was the #1 story on Facebook for 2 days. It was the #1 story on Twitter for 2 days. It was the #1 story on Reddit for 2 days. It was the #1 story on the New York Times' own website for over 2 days. And every major media organization in the world, not in the United States, in the world, was calling us, trying to cover us. And I was flying all over, I was trying to find the right way. And all of a sudden my mission changed a little bit in that moment because I wanted to just solve this for the 30 people that got their pay doubled and the 70 people that were under that pay rate that got a raise. But what I accidentally did was created a conversation where all of us together decided at once, this is a problem, and this is something that we're all going to work on together in our own way. A lot of people have asked me, Dan, do you expect other people to follow suit? You know, I guarantee you if Kevin, the owner of the Flying M, could afford to do what I did, I guarantee you he'd do it. I don't think it's realistic for that business, right? Every business is different. Every business owner is different. Every situation is different. But I guarantee you, that Kevin has contributed to people that work at his company and people that used to work at his company living the American dream, achieving middle-class status, things that we all value. And so my challenge to you guys as business leaders is think about this. Think about, excuse me, is this an area of concern for you? And in Seattle, where we have a lot of multimillionaires and billionaires, many of whom are my friends, I asked them this question: would you rather turn over millions and millions of dollars to your grandkids, or would you rather turn over a society where those kids and grandkids can thrive on their own, where they can chart their own course? And I think it's so tempting for us to always grab on, always take more, right? But actually, when we let things go, there's just, to me, I feel so free and I feel so content and comfortable with that. And so it's been a crazy whirlwind. It's been fun to experience, but honestly, I'm a little bit sick of the attention. Attention feels really good up to a point, and I passed that like a long time ago at this point.
Here's some attention for you.
Thank you. My 40-year goal comes from Idaho. I have a 40-year goal. By the time I'm 70, there's one thing I want to achieve. I would actually challenge everybody maybe just to take 20 seconds right now and think, what's the one thing in life that if you could achieve this one thing, you'd be willing to give up everything else for it? So my calling, my one thing, I just want to be a small little speck of sand in a revolution where business ceases to be about financial engineering, greed, always focusing about money, and it goes back to our Idaho way of doing business, which is serving others, having a purpose. And my friend Garrett over there, who I went to Nampa Christian with, he always jokes around that we have to take over the whole world and have world domination. I'm an underdog. I think Idaho's an underdog. I think we can do it. So I would ask you and I would encourage you on two things. One is when it comes to the economy and the opportunity and people getting ahead, how can you lead yourself? How can you lead other people to make a contribution to this problem? Number one. Number two, what's that one thing? And I don't care if you're 15 years old. I don't care if you're 90 years old. We all have some amount of time left. What's that one thing that you want to accomplish before you sign off and say, I'm going to go to the beach for a while? And I think that if we lead ourselves and we lead others in that way, I think we live in a great country. We live in a great world. We're all so lucky. I think it's just going to get better and better. So I'm pretty excited. And I'd love to answer some questions if anybody has one. You can take the gloves off. Go ahead.
Over the last month, how many job applications have you received?
So funny thing about that is, prior to the announcement, we were getting between 200 and 300 job applications per open position. And that to me is the exact right amount. Since a month ago when we made the announcement, we've gotten thousands, tens of thousands even, for every single position, and it's actually not all that helpful. If I stuck 10,000 resumes on your desk, what would you do? Guess I have to quit my job and just sort through resumes the rest of my life. So it's been challenging, and we're underdogs in this. A lot of people think, you get a lot of press and everything becomes easy. There are advantages, but it's a huge distraction. And actually, there was an investment firm that made a ton of money by betting that companies that got a lot of attention, a lot of press, would fail or would lose value. And I think we overestimate how much it's worth to get attention, how much it's worth to be front and center on stage, and we underestimate the quiet strength inside of us that says, always do the right thing. Always live by your values. So it's been a whirlwind on resumes too, and I think we're gonna get some good people, but to be honest with you, and this was not my intention, the next week after everything broke, people were in the office round the clock, just trying to survive. We were in serious crisis survival mode. And for the most part, that's calmed down a little bit now for the company. But for me, I said this week, I don't want to do any media. I was like, I'm sick of it. No more. But I got to do the Nampa Chamber, right? And then there were a few other things that came up too. So this time I mean it, no more. Thanks for the question. Yeah, what's your name?
Nicole.
Nicole.
I applaud you on following your heart as a leader.
Thanks.
For doing that. Have you thought through the sustainability of your business model over time and what that would look like?
I've had a lot of help thinking through it. I don't know if you guys know, but there was a very famous, very well-respected individual who's probably one of the top 2 or 3 broadcasters in the history of radio in terms of success, who came out and said, and also some other folks, I'll combine some comments, who came out and said, everyone that works for Dan is going to be on food stamps. Everyone that works for Dan is going to be on welfare. It's going to kill their drive and motivation. Human nature is going to take over, and this company is going to implode, and they will forever be an example of how to destroy a company and how to destroy a society. So I had some help thinking through it. And I actually think that Rush Limbaugh and some of the other folks, I think they're half right. And you might say, Dan, why would you do that if you think they're half right? I do think they're half right. I think what they say has a lot of merit. But what they're doing is they're appealing to kind of the part of human nature that I think we're moving away from. And I think I'm appealing to the part of human nature that we're moving toward. And at the end of the day, it's going to be an execution thing, right? Can we pull it off? I think we're underdogs here. It would be a lot easier and potentially more sustainable to be conventional and keep going. But I think this is what leadership is about. It's taking risk. And there's another word, capitalism, that's about taking risks, right? When we all do the same thing, when we all have to do the same thing, I've been called socialist, communist, whatever over the past month. Isn't that never mind. Isn't that communism to say that we all have to do the same thing, that no one can stick out? So I'm actually sticking out as a unique individual, and I don't want you guys to follow me. I don't want anyone to do what I'm doing. I want you to do what's in your heart, what you think is right. And I think if we do that, instead of always trying to just copy each other and do the same thing, I think we'll get farther faster. So I guess to answer your question, I'm going to be working pretty hard. Thank you. Yeah.
You may have answered my question, but talk about motivation. Have you kind of stumbled on a new definition of motivation? Like for people, and now they're unencumbered to give their best, do their best, be who they are.
How many of you are motivated by money? Like even a little bit. Everybody. The latest science seems to indicate, and I'm not an expert, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an economist, I'm not a psychologist. The latest science seems to indicate that money is a decent motivator. It's probably number 4 or 5 for most of us in this room, right? It's on the list. What's really motivating, right? We want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to look out for people we care about and take care of them. We want to have a purpose and have an impact. So to me, it's the same old motivation that we've always had, but it's a matter of getting in touch with it. I think there's two ways to use the word integrity. And one way, which is common that we all use it, is you don't lie, you don't cheat, you don't steal, and that's fine. But I think another definition of integrity is I'm trying to figure out who I actually am, and I'm trying to live in a way that's consistent with those values that are deep down. I could take that for granted and say, I don't need to think about it, or I could strive to get better at it every single day. So that to me is a huge motivator. The motivation for our company is sticking up for the little guy. Credit card processing is unfair for businesses, and every business owner out there will agree with that, and we want to make it fair for them, right? So that's our company motivation, but for me, a big part of my personal motivation comes from my mom and my dad. I want to be better every day. So, thanks for your question. Yeah?
No, I didn't hear the last person's question, but
Oh, the last question, I'll just repeat it.
that's okay.
I'll just repeat it for everybody else.
I think I got it.
Okay.
I just have a quick question for you. Can you share with us how the productivity in relationship to your decision making?
Yeah.
And raising everybody's salary, how your employees' productivity within the company has changed and how that's affected the viability or the longevity, or how you see the longevity of your company?
Well, look, I think that if you as a business leader could make the choice between paying somebody 10% more or spending an hour with them per month, helping them develop as an individual, that hour is going to go way further in their career than the 10% raise. So you have to keep that in mind. And I would encourage you, this is not about money, right? Money is the optical part. Money is the part that the press is interested in. Money is the part that goes viral because it's this big conversation. But it's actually more about leadership. It's more about you being committed to your team. And, you know, I think, I just talked to you for a little bit, but I think you have that same passion that I have. And so I think it's about that commitment. And if you spend the time mentoring those around you and helping them be their best self, they will find ways to make more money for your community, whatever that is, your company, etc. And then you will have the ability to pay them more. So it really has to be earned. The weird thing that I found in the economy, which is what I think caused a lot of interest, is everybody in my company earned it, but then I didn't actually have to give it to them. I could keep it for myself, which is how a lot of people do it. And I was very, very tempted to do it that way. So to me, it has to start with that leadership, with the mentorship, with the motivation, and the money should be a consequence of that. I also think that it's a decent goal to say, I want everybody that I care about to make at least $70,000 or at least $75,000 a year. And there are some businesses where that's not possible. So maybe you say, I want you to work for me for 3 years or 5 years or 7 years. And I'm going to help get you from here to here, and then we're going to talk about how this is going to relate to the rest of your career. That's like true passion and true care. And I actually have people that worked for me that now are in leadership positions at Amazon, at Porch, at a lot of these great companies, and I'm just as proud of them as people that are still working at Gravity in leadership positions at Gravity, right? So I think it's about that care more so than the money. And the money part, I don't think everybody can do the same thing. So, thanks for your question.
Do you still have time for music?
So this is my high school music teacher, Tom Dale. You know, Mr. Dale, it's been pretty rough lately, to be honest. I love music, and my singing in the shower is getting worse every day. But I'm going to keep trying, and music will always be a huge part of my life. I know right now there's this huge debate about STEM and all this kind of stuff, and I don't know much about education enough to opine on that debate. But I'm really thankful that I studied music, and I think it had a huge impact on my life, so I'll say that. Thanks, Mr. Dale.
So So nothing in your bio mentioned University of Michigan, and I'm happy because we moved from Columbus, Ohio. We're big Buckeyes.
Nice.
So where your father and I left off, maybe. Here's a question for you, Dan. I know it wasn't your intent, or at least I sense that it wasn't your intent through the attention to have opportunities to grow, to expand. But with the attention through the media, through the applications for jobs, I can only imagine there are opportunities where you've struck a chord that's resonated with others, where they would desire to do business with a company that that is approaching business this way.
Yeah.
So could you speak about what you've seen so far and what you expect to maybe see in that regard?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question. So to me, business boils down to three things. And number one is keep your clients. Number two is your clients have to like you better tomorrow than they did today or yesterday. If you think that I can just keep doing things the same for them and that's going to work, bad news. It's not going to work. You have to do more for your clients today than you did yesterday. You have to do more for them tomorrow than you did today. And those two are constant. And then I think the third thing with business is if you can get new clients, that's good too. How many of us in our personal life, in our work life, get that backwards, right? It's the shiny object thing, right? We always want to grow. We always want more. For me, if you said to me, Dan, all your clients, you'll like change their lives in ways that you would have never expected, and you'll never get another new client again, will you make that trade? I'd say absolutely. So for me, growth should be organic because you really took care of the people that got you there. And I would say the same thing for the team. A lot of people said, oh, you're paying so much more, you should like fire all your whole team and upgrade. And what's that phrase, like dance with the one who brung you? So I like that. I wanna stay with our clients, and we are growing, but the growth is coming from organic. It's coming from our clients like us, and other people are attracted to it. And I'm really proud to say that we are growing really fast. And I think we're underdogs, but it's really fun and exciting to have that success and have it, keep going and keep growing. So thanks for the question. Yeah?
How do you get away with making a decision like that? So,
The cops are after me.
Yeah. Does your company have like a board of advisors? How do you, the rest of the leadership in your company, they have to hopefully, agree with the board of directors. So I'm just curious on how that decision actually was rolled out for the rest of your company.
Yeah, well, there's a little company in Seattle called Costco that does similar stuff. And the CFO, Richard Galanti, he's a friend and mentor of mine. So, he helped me with a lot of courage in it. But I probably pitched it to about 25 people, 20 of whom were CEOs and outside advisors, and 5 of whom were people that worked at Gravity in financial or leadership type roles. And the reaction, it was interesting how consistent it was. All of the 25 people said, bad idea. And they were pretty strongly thinking it was a bad idea. And then I told them a second and a third time. I talked to my oldest brother, who's a business consultant. He helped me through the logistics. I talked to my dad about it. He's brilliant. Like, he's been my mentor my whole life. He talked me through the logistics. And quickly, these 25 people shifted from good idea, bad idea to, okay, Dan's going to do this. Let's help him. And my dad helped me do it. My brother helped me do it. And so that was great. But the question, I think, implies a little bit of, can everyone do it too? And the answer is no, clearly. But everybody can do something. And I've had between 200 and 300 messages over the past month that are either, like a woman came up to me and said, Dan, I walked into the office. I didn't know this woman. I walked into the office and my boss gave me a $10,000 raise. And he said it was because of you, that you inspired him. And I've had hundreds of CEOs tell me we completely redid our pay. And we always could have done it, but we just never thought of it, right? So a lot of times it's that creativity. I guess the takeaway for me is I'm glad I went hiking. Because if you're stuck in the office all the time, you're not going to come up with your unique ideas. You know, this building is beautiful, but it's square and it's predictable. In nature, you know, everything's like random and crazy. And I think being in that environment and letting your brain be random and crazy, you know, you come up with ideas. Most of them are horrible. And sometimes there's a couple that are really good and you want to stick with it. So, Dave?
Your dad is a prolific writer.
Yeah.
Great leader.
Book pitch.
What's the name?
My dad has a book called The Complete Leader Out. There's also a leadership course that goes with it. It's phenomenal.
It's a great book. What's the name of your book?
Oof. I'll steal one from Obama. Lessons from My Father. You know, Dave, I would be so happy. I'm not saying I'm trying to have this happen, but I would be so happy if tomorrow everyone forgot about me and I could go back to my regular life. I'm having a great time, and it's a privilege to be up here, and it's a privilege to be talking to all you guys, and I truly do love it, but I also love just sitting at home with my dog. And so, you know, I'm going to think long and hard before I go down the book path, but I might call you for some advice if it's okay. Yeah. Skip, Coach Hall.
Yeah, and you know, after 40-some years of coaching and building teams, and seeing this hit the news, and watching all this, having been to Rose Bowls and all this stuff, the thing that really struck me, and I want to share this with all the people here tonight, is that people say there's no I in team. When you redefine it, there is an I in team. It's called interdependence. Not independence, interdependence, on how a team can work together, come together, and do something great. Congratulations.
Thanks, Coach. You know, I really appreciate that, Coach, and I think we are all interdependent, and I think whether you are, you know, Protestant, Catholic, LDS, you know, somebody that doesn't go to church, whether you're Republican, Democrat, you know, all this stuff. We have all these fake divisions, but at the end of the day, you know, when we're united, we can, it feels good. It's fun, right? It feels really good. And it's just a really enjoyable way to live. And I think, you know, we're connected whether or not we realize it, right? Our awareness of biology does not change the biology. And so it's been really fun for me to do something that just is true in a way that I didn't even know. So thanks, Coach. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.